Hey guys, be a psych here. No, I just wanted a bit of a chit chat, just going off the script here. If I ever really have a script most of the time, of course. But anyway. Because, of course, there's some things that, well, I really don't care for. If I don't need a script, well, why make a script, right? But anyway. So, I've been, I would say, at work for over 10 years, especially after the first 10 years. There was always my school work, of course, in the past, but, I remember back then I would hardly ever have a day off. My father in the past, growing up, I don't know, always just felt like, work was like the only thing that was important to him. That we like had to sacrifice basically everything else just for work or just to be successful. And, that is kind of what it does take to be successful in a lot of workplaces nowadays. However, I always thought it was just funny how, especially when I was still, younger, these, especially during, the recession, all these guys would make excuses for not, hiring the younger adults lots of times because what they would do, especially at the time, is that they would have you work for a few months at the most, and then they would either fire you for some half-assed reason or just something else that sometimes they didn't even have proof for, to be frank. I remember at the time I had a really hard time just trying to get a call back for a job. I just think it's so funny how these adults at the time, they were just acting like, oh, kids nowadays are just lazy. And again, I was just applying for a job again and again and again. I applied for every single, at the time, I applied for every single restaurant just about here in the town I'm living at now at the time. Because I at least had some restaurant experience, but they would just never fucking call me back. I would keep on applying, and they would just never call me back. Ever. They would never call me back. And it was just ridiculous. And of course, a lot of my friends coming out of high school, they spoke about the same thing. I remember one of my, you know, co-friends, from high school actually applied to Burger King one time after we graduated from high school, right? And instead of the manager or supervisor at that Burger King at the time, instead of them taking my friend, they took some lady who didn't even have any teeth. They took some lady, some dumbass lady with almost no education, with no teeth, over my friend who went to college and got her bachelor's degree. They took that lady over my friend. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. You want to know why they did it? It's because the lady that she took had less experience and she would have had to have paid more, for her college degree that she had. Since she actually had at least a bachelor's degree, she would have had to have paid more for her experience in college than the lady with no teeth. And it's just ridiculous things like that because they would say shit to you like, "Oh, if you want to go get a job, just go to college." But well, my friends were going to college and they sure as hell weren't getting jobs. At least not most of them. I mean, I legitimately was having trouble getting a job for over 2 years at the time. And when I finally did get a job, what I ended up doing, of course, was going through a temp service, is what I did. I literally had to just keep on going through a temp service just to get experience. You know, because I remember in the 90s, you could literally just, even if you gave like a shitty interview, you could still get a job. That's why you heard the phrase back then, just get a job. I mean, how often do you hear that anymore? I mean, sometimes you hear it, but not like you did back then. You legitimately had to be lazy in the 90s not to get a job. Nowadays, you have to have a fucking PhD just to get a job. I thought it was funny how one time my father, thought it was, appropriate for him to tell me that if he was younger and he tried getting a job, that he would have gotten a job before I would have gotten one. And I said, Dad, if you were 18, let's say you let's say went from 1970 when you were still young, and somehow you, let's say, went forward in time, and somehow you ended up in the future right now. If you tried getting a job with the kind of degree that you had at the time, you wouldn't even have a job. You wouldn't have any job, Dad. With the same kind of expectations that you had when you were younger, it's a whole different ballgame nowadays, Dad. I mean, my dad was lucky. Like, when he got out of high school, he could barely even fucking read. I mean, it was so easy to get especially if you're a white Christian at the time, it was easy for you to get a job back then. But even like nowadays, that doesn't really work anymore. It takes a lot more in comparison to back then to get a job. And I remember at the time, I remember the Walmart used to have unrealistic expectations for people getting a job over at Walmart at one point. They would expect you to do shit in like 10 minutes, like cleaning up whole aisles and shit, like in just 10 minutes. It's like, oh, you weren't able to do it in 10 minutes? Well, we're just going to have to let you go then. It's like, why? It's like, well, because we don't want to hire you on full time so that we don't have to pay for your benefits. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just leave then. You know what I mean? And I just thought it was so funny how, growing up and realizing over time that a lot of these workplaces, they don't even follow their own fucking rules. They don't. They really do not follow their own fucking rules. And sometimes they let people get away with shit all the time. But it's like, if you do something wrong, it's like, oh, you're out the door, you're fired. I remember one time I saw this one guy, he actually purposely broke a piece of equipment, work equipment that they paid for, and all they did was give him a day off. And I already know the reason why they did that was because he was actually the supervisor's brother, actually. And they got into an argument that day, is what happened. And that's the reason why he broke the equipment and started a fuss like he did. But of course, he's the supervisor's brother, so he just fucking gets away with it, right? Well, I remember this one other person, he had to call in. He said he was going to be late because he needed to pick up his kids for school. And this is literally a week later. And this guy, he was working there for like, I don't know, 6 months. And hadn't really done anything wrong before then, really. I knew him. And he got fired over it. Just like that. He just got fucking fired over it. Because, you see, when sometimes people let other people get away with shit, then sometimes somebody else will make a mistake, somebody that they don't care about, and they'll think, well, I want to show the people that I don't, let shit go like I just let my brother do, so I'm just going to fire this guy, is what ends up happening. I mean, they literally are just firing to show off to their other workers that they don't let shit happen, even though obviously they do, right? Or sometimes they might have a crush on a woman, they let them get away with shit. And so sometimes these women will act like they're entitled to shit. And, and also, I just think, especially with these small town places that I've worked at, you're not supposed to have rumors go around the workplace. Rumors, from what I hear, people get fired over rumors. They get fired over starting rumors, right? They're like, oh, we don't tolerate people that start rumors. Well, guess what happens? Every time somebody would start a rumor on me, even though obviously it's something that's not true. They won't try to search for the truth or anything. And I'll go back to the back office at some point. They'll be like, hey, some guys, at least one or two guys have been saying this about you and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, that's not true. Like, what the hell? It's like, well, yeah, we're going to let you go then. It's like, wait, you're going to fire me over this? It's like, well, we're not going to fire you. We're just going to let you go. And it's just like, okay, I guess I'll just have to look for a new job then. I mean, I gotta say, sometimes it just really does not take much. All it takes is just one person that doesn't like you. All it takes is just one person, one manager, supervisor, something. All it takes is one person to not like you, and you're out the door. That's all it really takes. And yeah, sometimes my father will tell me shit like, well, don't give them an excuse to fire you. It's like, Dad, they have literally written the rules in a way that if they really want you kicked out of the job or fired, they are eventually going to find a reason to do so. It literally is almost impossible to keep your job if the wrong person dislikes you. It really is. And it is kind of ridiculous. Now, I know in places here like Iowa, they've tried keeping things the old-fashioned way. Because back in the day, in the early 1900s, what they used to be able to do in every state is that they used to literally just fire people just because they didn't like them. Or just because, there's something stupid. I mean, that actually happened to one of my ancestors, actually, in the 1800s. He used to be a general, actually, in the Civil War. And he was actually doing a good job, but just because somebody didn't like him, just because that one to two people didn't like him, they just kicked him out. They just kicked him out. And that is a tradition that they try to keep here in Iowa, which of course is going to fuck them up in the future when enough of, people that are not whites are coming through here in Iowa. Because let me tell you, when, people that are Mexican and black or just from Mexico or are Mexican but they're actually are really, an American citizen, when people of different races basically are starting to come through here in Iowa and they're starting to own their own businesses, guess who's going to be the first person to be kicked out of these jobs? I'm going to tell you who's going to be the first person getting kicked out of these jobs. It's these rednecks trying to keep everything the same. They are going to be the first people that are going to get kicked out. And when that starts to happen, that is when things are going to start to finally change in places like Iowa. That being said, I will end this video, and I'll see you guys later.